Good evening, I'm Katie Wilson and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Syria announces ceasefire after the latest outbreak of violence. The European Union fails to approve new sanctions on Russia. EU calls Trump's 30% tariff absolutely unacceptable and will work towards a deal. A deadly week of violence in Syria's Druze-majority Suwaida province may be easing after Damascus announced a ceasefire and Israel launched strikes in defense of the Druze community. Nearly 100 people have been killed and the humanitarian situation remains dire.
In Syria's southern Suwaida city, a tense calm hangs in the air after the Ministry of Defense announced a full ceasefire. The decision follows days of deadly clashes between Druze militias and Bedouin tribal fighters that killed at least 99 people. According to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the dead include 60 Druze among them, 4 civilians, as well as 18 Bedouin fighters, 14 government troops, and several unidentified individuals. The Defense Ministry confirmed 18 military casualties. The violence, which began Friday, quickly spiraled into street battles across the governorate, forcing thousands to flee and prompting the imposition of a citywide curfew. On Tuesday morning, convoys of Syrian army tanks and trucks rolled into the city, with the backing of Druze spiritual leaders who had earlier urged fighters to surrender and allow government troops to restore order. But by the afternoon, the tone shifted with top Druze cleric Sheikh Hikmat al-Hajri accusing government forces of violating ceasefire terms and shelling residential areas. The ongoing chaos triggered a swift response from Israel, which launched airstrikes on Syrian positions in Suwaida and near Damascus. Tel Aviv framed the move as a defense of Syria's Druze minority, a community with deep ties to Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu stated that Israeli forces were ordered to strike Syrian units entering Suwaida, vowing to prevent harm to Druze civilians and maintain the demilitarization of the Israeli-Syrian border zone.
For more on this, we go to Blake Sifton, who reports from Tel Aviv.
The Israeli military carried out what it called exceptionally large-scale attacks on a Syrian military convoy as it approached the Druze city of Suwaida in southern Syria on Tuesday. That city has been the site of clashes between militias from the Druze community and Bedouin clans, at times backed by the Syrian military, over the last few days that have seen the deaths of dozens of people. The Israeli military said that the airstrikes targeting this convoy targeted tanks, armored personnel carriers, as well as multiple rocket launchers. And these attacks Tuesday followed earlier Israeli military airstrikes that targeted a convoy of Syrian tanks as they also approached the city of Suwaida on Monday. Under pressure from its own Druze minority, the Israeli government has positioned itself as the protector of Syria's Druze community following the downfall of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in December. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a joint statement on Tuesday that Israel is committed to preventing harm being inflicted on the Druze in Syria, owing to the deep covenant of blood with our Druze citizens in Israel. In addition to positioning itself as this protector of the Druze community in Syria, Israel has also vowed to enforce the demilitarization of southern Syria and prevent armed groups from entering the region next to the Golan Heights, which it controls. Blake Sifton for A News in Tel Aviv.
Tensions are escalating between Iran and Germany, with Tehran accusing Berlin of violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by hosting a US nuclear-capable aircraft. Iran's foreign ministry also condemned Germany's support for Israel's recent military campaign, calling it a breach of international law.
Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Baghai told reporters during a weekly press briefing in Tehran that Germany's hosting of US air bases equipped with the aircraft capable of carrying nuclear warheads is clear violation of Germany's obligations under the NPT. He said, We are aware that a significant portion of US nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction are stationed in Germany, which is a clear sign of the country's violation of its international obligations. There was not an official statement on the website of German embassy in Tehran in response to the Iranian spokesman's assertion. Baghai's remarks were made after he said on Friday that Germany is complicit in Israel's aggression of Iran for endorsing its war in June that lasted for 12 days. He said, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's claim on legitimacy and legality of Israel's aggression contradicts the fundamental principles of the UN Charter and international law. Tehran and Berlin are already at loggerheads for the past 30 years over the role of German companies in supplying chemical agents to Saddam Hussein's regime during Iran-Iraq war in 1980s, which Iran says was made with German government's green light. Germany is also one of the three major European countries, including France and the UK, which signed the 2015 Iran nuclear deal in Vienna and has threatened to apply for a snapback of UN nuclear sanctions against Iran. Foreign Ministry spokesman Baghai said the European Troika's threats lacks legal justification after Iran's nuclear sites were bombed by US and that Tehran will respond proportionally to their move. Turad Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth hosted German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius for a closed-door meeting expected to focus on the country's security partnership, including NATO's defense spending commitments. Germany has relaxed its constitutional debt brake to meet NATO's new core military spending target, a move that will raise German defense spending to 162 billion euros. Pistorius is also expected to discuss Berlin's offer to fund American Patriot air defense systems for Ukraine. The proposal follows President Trump's decision to authorize military aid to Ukraine with the condition that it be paid for by the European Union.
And I think we've seen
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has thanked President Trump after he announced a new delivery of weapons. Zelensky expressed gratitude for the 50-day deadline given to Russia to agree to a ceasefire or face new sanctions. Zelensky said discussions with Trump's special envoy Keith Kellogg focused on air defense and stronger sanctions against Moscow. He also had a phone call with Mark Rutte and Trump on plans to deliver more Patriot missile systems from the US, Germany and Norway.
On the meeting with General Kellogg, he has begun his visit to Ukraine, and it has been quite substantive. We had a productive discussion. I am grateful to President Trump for his readiness to support the protection of our people's lives.
Former US Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, says Western unity is growing, with the US and Europe working together to supply Ukraine long term. He says Putin's strategy to wait out the West is failing, and NATO's support for Ukraine is now stronger than it has been in months.
The Americans and the Europeans are teaming up in a mutually beneficial way, teaming up to supply the Ukrainians with the weapons that they need over the longer term. So Putin is going to have to realize over the 50 days or sooner that he's not winning and can't win. And he can't wait us out. That's his only strategy. But his only strategy is try to wait out the Ukrainians or wait out the Europeans or wait out the Americans. Well, these sanctions and these weapons demonstrate to Putin that he can't wait us out. And then he may have to come to the table and strike a deal. I think this will increase the unity in NATO. NATO now will be unified against Russia. The support for Ukraine that has been indicated today by the Secretary General and by the President is stronger than it has been in the past 6 months. The NATO summit last month was another indication coming from President Trump, as well as all the other NATO leaders, that NATO is unified against Russia and in support of Ukraine, and that continues today.
Well, to discuss this further, we are joined by Julia Okonnell of the Dignitas Fund. Thank you for being with us. Now, what might the next steps be regarding military aid for Ukraine?
Thank you for having me. So today we've seen that President Trump really changed his position and acting. It's not anymore words that of disappointment about President Putin. It's action, which peace through strength he declared once. So this defensive, first of all, people will sleep more peacefully at night with the Patriot systems. Their frontline soldiers will have more capabilities with the drone jamming technologies, with reconnaissance drones, with 155 millimeter shells. But very important one, that this one has offensive weapons, that Russia will have less, Russia with these weapons can reach far in deep in Russia for air bases, for the military production, for their logistics, and so on. So that decreases definitely Russian capability to in this war. The most important question and most important this is sets the precedent that the President Trump is with his actions shows that the world should stay in the order that we know after World War II, and the brutal dictatorship should be not only deterred, should be punished. And
so would you say there's now a consensus in the White House about the necessity of military assistance for Ukraine?
Could you repeat?
Would you say that there's now a consensus in the White House for the necessity of military aid to Ukraine?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. It's absolutely that's been recognized the necessity, and that Trump, as a President of the United States, who thinks first of all of the interest of United States, sees that supporting Ukraine is a national and American interest. The warfare, the drone warfare that we see in Ukraine cannot be ignored, and it's been recognized by many American military, in the American military community. It's been recognized by many Republican congressmen and senators who support aid to Ukraine. It's been most importantly recognized by American people who support aid to Ukraine, up to 70%. And part of this whole story is that people who do not support straight aid, those people, Trump has a very good explanation, because the aid Patriot system will be bought by European countries. So you kind of cover all the parts of the story. People who do support, and it's a strong support, and people who don't, they also understand that it's in the interest of the United States. So that kind of map is definitely changing for Russia.
Now, Trump is known to be quite an indecisive president, to say the least. How much can we trust that Trump is going to follow through on this promise to provide those Patriot missiles?
Very good question. Thank you. I don't honestly think that you can trust, or trust in politician, any politicians, at a little slippery slope. But again, as a president of the United States, he has to act in the interest of United States. And aid to Ukraine is 100% in the interest of United States. And many military, many investment community said that Ukraine right now is a laboratory, basically, if you wish to use that word. It's unfortunate we need to use that word, but it is a lab for the drone warfare. And Russia is being supported by Iranian drone technologies, by Chinese chips, by North Korean troops, by most importantly, zero to value to the human life, and of course they are supported by the cheap oil. So all of that right now, it's all of that is against American national interest. So Trump, as a president acting in the American national interest, recognizes and making steps to support and give aid to Ukraine. And this is only we can call peace through strength.
Thank you very much for your insights and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Now, the European Union has failed to reach an agreement on a new sanctions package against Russia, despite warnings about Russia's escalating bombing and use of banned chemical weapons in Ukraine. Divisions among member states have stalled the deal for over 2 months. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas warned Russia shows no signs of peace, making stronger pressure essential. She welcomed President Trump's weapons aid to Ukraine, but urged the US to share more of the burden. Slovakia has yet to make a decision, delaying the process, even though the EU Commission has met its demands.
I'm really sad that we didn't reach this agreement today. I must say that we were really close to reassure Slovakia. The Commission has delivered what they asked for. Now the ball is in Slovakia's court, and we must get this deal done. It has been already 2 months.
Donald Trump's sweeping tariff threats have sparked pushback across Europe and Mexico. The US president says he's open to talks, while leaders from Brussels to Mexico City say they are ready to negotiate, but not without firm red lines.
European Union officials are heading to Washington to negotiate a deal on tax hikes, according to US President Donald Trump. It's after he proposed 30% tariffs at the weekend, which would take effect on the 1st of August. Trump says he's open to negotiations with the EU and other partners, but he warned that action would be taken if no deal is reached.
The deals are made. There are no deals to make. They would like to do a different kind of a deal, and we're always open to talk. We are open to talk, including to Europe. In fact, they're coming over, they'd like to talk to us.
Trump's move has drawn strong pushback. EU trade ministers met in Brussels on Monday, called the tariffs absolutely unacceptable. Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič warns that such measures could devastate transatlantic trade and vows countermeasures if talks fail. However, he does remain hopeful for a deal backed by both EU governments and Parliament.
It was also very clear today, and I have to say that comparing to the previous discussions we had with the ministers, now it came very clear across the table. So if this is a situation, we have to protect the jobs, we have to protect the businesses, we have to protect EU economy, and we need to go for these rebalancing measures. That message was strongest I've witnessed since we started the discussion with the US.
The latest tax hikes are part of a broader strategy targeting not only Europe, but also countries such as Japan, South Korea and Mexico. Mexico's president has hit back at US criticism that her government was not doing enough to combat fentanyl. Claudia Sheinbaum defends her government's record, urging the US to tackle trafficking and gun smuggling on its own soil.
We are doing our part. They also have to do their part. We have insisted on matters related to controlling the flow of weapons from the US into Mexico, on the arrest of people involved in drug trafficking in the US, and on the responsibilities that belong to the United States.
Sheinbaum said both sides are nearing a new security agreement, but ruled out any deployment of US forces inside Mexico.
Well, the US is bringing back tariffs on fresh tomatoes from Mexico, ending a key trade agreement in place since 2019. The move is part of Washington's broader push for tougher trade terms.
The US Commerce Department has announced a 17% duty on most fresh tomato imports from Mexico, withdrawing from a suspension agreement that had paused an anti-dumping investigation since 2019. According to the US, the tariffs are meant to address what it calls unfair pricing. Mexico has pushed back, calling the move unjust and harmful to producers on both sides of the border. The country exports more than $3 billion in tomatoes annually, most of it to the US. Mexican officials warn the duty could raise prices for American consumers, noting that 2 out of every 3 tomatoes eaten in the US come from Mexico. The Trump administration says the move is part of efforts to secure better deals for American farmers. Mexico, meanwhile, says it will support its tomato producers and try to reach a new agreement, just as it did in 2019 when a similar dispute was resolved after 4 months.
Well, let's return to our top story and the developments in Syria. Joining us now is political analyst Hamdi Rafi. Thank you for being with us. Now, Israel has claimed to be a protector of Syria's Druze community. To what extent does this damage the credibility of the central government in Damascus?
Well, it doesn't damage the credibility of the central government at all. Clearly, what we see is a very surprising turn of events. Yesterday, President al-Shara was in Azerbaijan, in Baku, meeting with your President Aliyev, discussing the security arrangements in the region. And there's no question that during that meeting, there was a discussion about Israel and Israel's incursions into Syria. What we've seen is that Israel, instead of embracing Azerbaijan's initiative to create this security paradigm, also supported by the United States, it has chosen to continue to support a terror group created by al-Hijri, a Druze extremist, and he's actually holding other Druze in the Suwaida area as hostages against their will. He is not supported by the Druze community, and nothing that we've seen in that Suwaida area undermines the Syrian government. If anything, it undermines the possibility of security and stability between the neighbors and demonstrates that Israel is controlled by domestic extreme concerns and not pursuing a rational foreign policy.
But surely there's challenges in regards to de-escalation and stability in Syria.
No, they've already succeeded in stabilizing the area. They've entered the area of Suwaida. They've released the hostages that were being held by al-Hijri. The locals living there are celebrating that the Syrian government has entered to bring that stability. This might have been a reasonable question yesterday when it was unknown what was the outcome going to be, but now we're seeing the outcome. Israel has failed. The Syrian government has brought stability back to the area. And the only real question is what price will be paid by Israel and those Druze terrorists that have now killed almost 300 Syrian government soldiers in order for the Syrian government to bring that stability back.
So what does this mean for the wider region?
Extremists have done, if they have actually paraded around Syrian government soldiers and their dead bodies.
So what does this mean for the wider Middle East?
It's not an issue of stability now. It's an issue of what will we see as an outcome with those relations between Israel and Syria.
So tell me more, what are the challenges there, especially looking to the future and looking to stability in the wider Middle East?
Well, if you'll recall, I was on this program on AZ News TV yesterday talking about that security paradigm. And that security paradigm is something that's been embraced by Azerbaijan, the United States, neighbors of Syria, the new Syrian government. Everyone has embraced this security paradigm where Syria plays an important role in bringing quiet and economic prosperity to the region. And serves as an energy conduit and transportation trade conduit for the rest of the region. The only governments that have not accepted this is Iran and Israel. There were clear indications that Israel has been in talks with Syria, but now they've done a 180 and abandoned those talks, it seems, and gone the other way. So the real issue is whether we can get back on track with those talks to create that new security paradigm.
Thank you very much for your insights and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
The European Union unveiled investment plans of up to €2.5 billion for Armenia as part of the Global Gateway strategy aiming to boost infrastructure and economic ties. An additional €1.5 million was pledged to support Armenia's independent media. These commitments followed Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan's working visit to Brussels, where he met with EU leaders Antonio Costa and Ursula von der Leyen. Both sides had reaffirmed their deepening partnership, while Pashinyan reflected on the discussion as productive and substantive. A residential building has collapsed in the central district of Tbilisi, prompting ongoing rescue operations and a formal investigation. Our Georgia correspondent Nini Nikolaishvili has the details.
2 people are now confirmed dead and 1 injured after the residential building collapsed in the heart of Tbilisi near Station Square. According to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, rescue and recovery efforts are ongoing and the area remains sealed off. An investigation has been launched under Article 240 of the Criminal Code, covering violation of construction and safety regulations. Earlier, the building has been officially classified as an emergency structure, deemed too dangerous for even rehabilitation. The city mayor, Okonnell, admitted today that the risks were well known, and yet the residents were still living inside when the building gave way. The authorities have offered relocation to tenants, but under the voluntary agreement that required full consensus. The consensus never came, and authorities chose not to enforce an evacuation despite knowing the structure could fail. The city mayor, Okonnell, described this incident as an accident. Meanwhile, the public defender's office announced that this would examine issues related to residential safety in the collapsed building. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A-News.
China is steadily strengthening its position in Central Asia. Its economic influence is being felt not only in business circles, but also in national policies across the region. The expansion of Chinese capital is especially visible in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Our Central Asia correspondent Fariza Kalamurzana has more.
China is expanding its economic presence across Central Asia. In Uzbekistan, the number of foreign invested companies is growing rapidly, and China now leads all other countries in terms of investment. According to the National Statistics Committee, as of July 1st, there are 16,685 businesses operating in Uzbekistan with foreign capital. That's nearly 3,000 more than a year ago, an increase of almost 20%. And China remains the top investor. Over 4,000 Chinese companies are registered in the country, making up 25.1% of all foreign enterprises. Last year, China surpassed Russia in this area for the first time, increasing its presence by nearly 44%. Russia ranks second, followed by Turkey and Kazakhstan, and other notable investors include South Korea and Afghanistan. China's role is even more prominent in neighboring Tajikistan, where it has become the country's leading trading partner, overtaking Russia for the first time since the late 1990s. In the first 5 months of 2025, trade between China and Tajikistan reached $964 million, a 31% increase year on year. China's share of Tajikistan's foreign trade rose to 24.8%, exceeding Russia's 23.2%. According to the Agency for Statistics of Tajikistan, over 70% of Chinese investment in country comes as direct investment. And Chinese companies are active in key sectors such as energy, infrastructure, telecommunications, mining and construction. Millions of dollars have been invested in roads, tunnels and power lines. China also remains Tajikistan's largest external creditor. As of early 2025, the country's debt to China stood at around $1 billion, about 1/3 of Tajikistan's total external debt. Experts emphasize that China's role in the region goes beyond economics. Its influence is becoming more strategic and shows no signs of slowing down. Fariza Kalamurzana, A-News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan is sticking with the OPEC Plus deal despite producing more oil than its targets this year. The country's Prime Minister made the announcement at a press conference. He clarified that Kazakhstan is not an OPEC member but participates in OPEC+. He said a $49 billion expansion at the Tengiz field under a production sharing agreement prevents limiting partner output, causing the country to exceed production targets this year. Kazakhstan has informed OPEC+ members of this advance. The United Nations is warning of a looming humanitarian collapse in Afghanistan. A high-level meeting between the UN mission chief and a senior Afghan official comes as aid agencies face a $1 billion shortfall, just as refugee returns from neighbouring countries surge. Our Afghanistan correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
The administrative deputy of Prime Minister Abdulsalam Hanafi met with Rosa Atunbayeva, head of the United Nations Assistant Mission in Afghanistan. According to the Prime Minister's office, Atunbayeva emphasized that despite ongoing budget constraint, UNAMA remains committed to supporting newly returned Afghan refugees. She raised concern over the accelerating pace of returns from Iran, adding that talks are underway with neighboring countries and expressing hope for positive regional cooperation. Hanafi in turn urged international organizations to scale up support and promised that the government would work to address the needs of returning families. Meanwhile, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has sounded the alarm over a massive funding gap. The new OCHA report says only 53% of the $3.06 billion required for Afghanistan's 2024 humanitarian response plan has been funded, leaving a shortfall of $1.43 billion. So far, 67% of aid recipients have only received food support, while less than half have access to multi-sectoral assistance. OCHA is now calling on the international community to urgently step in, warning that without immediate action, critical humanitarian efforts in Afghanistan may collapse. Tamim Bahis reporting for A News in Kabul, Afghanistan.
Thank you for watching. That's all we have for now, and have a wonderful evening.